Let's talk to Roy Lilley, who is, of course, former NHS Trust Chairman and Health Policy Analyst. Roy, very good morning to you.
Good morning, Mike. Welcome back.
Thank you very much indeed. Good to be back. Now, of course, we've done the junior doctors, we've done the consultants, we've had the nurses, we've had the ambulance drivers, we've now got GPs now threatening to bring the NHS to a standstill. I suppose my first question would be, well, how would we be able to tell?
Well, OK, look, let's just kind of widen this out, flesh this out and have a look at the context of it, Mike.
Yeah.
We get over 90%, 93% of first contacts in the NHS with GPs. And for that, they get less than 11% of the budget.
Yeah.
It's also worth remembering that GPs are partnership organisations and they are self-employed and they work with the NHS on contract. So they get money for doing stuff, looking after us, and special stuff for looking after special people's needs. So they at the end of the year, the difference between what they've earned through their contract earnings and what it's cost them to run their businesses is what they call the surplus. We call it the profit, and they draw down on that during the year, and that's how they make a living. Now, the average GP is earning between 90 and 150,000. It's a big spread because it's a big spread across the country. Now, they will say to you that they're doing 1 million GP appointments a day, which is more than ever anybody's ever done, 70% on the same day. A huge number now, of course, are done by preference from patients online or on their mobile phone and stuff like that. They'll also tell you, like the rest of us, that their heating bills have gone up, their costs have gone up, their salaries have gone up. And it is true to say that I think I'm right in saying 200 GP practices handed back their contracts to the ICBs last year because they simply couldn't make any money. So there is an issue in primary care. Now, would it be appropriate to go on strike? Well, look, as I've explained to you, 90% of first contacts are with GPs. If they withdraw their labour or they partly withdraw their labour, then there will be a huge number of people who've got serious things wrong with them that won't get discovered, won't get diagnosed, won't get referred, won't get treatment and won't do very well. So this is a very dangerous situation.
It is.
The BMA, as you say, have changed enormously. I mean, in my day, the BMA was a lunching club and they got some very nice offices in Tavistock Square and you used to look forward to being invited.
I think they're still there, actually. I don't know about how the lunches are like, but I mean, certainly there are plenty of doctors. There are plenty of doctors, Roy, as well, who are not in the BMA.
That's true. But it's important to point out the BMA is not what it was. There's a group within the BMA, rather like Momentum was in the Labour Party. Yeah. They've taken over the BMA. It's called Doctors' Votes, and it's Doctors' Votes group that are running the junior doctor strike at the moment, and it's the Doctors' Votes group that are running the ballot for the BMA. So they've taken over, quite legitimately, using democratic means, they've taken over all the major committees and they now effectively run the BMA. The BMA is not what it was. They will do it. I tell you, if they get a strike mandate, they will do it. Now, the problem now is, of course, what will the government do? They're talking about a 5.5% improvement in pay for the public sector. That won't settle the junior doctors who want 35%, and they're sticking out for it. Talks are underway, but I'm hearing they're not making much progress. And I'm not clear what the GPs want, but whatever it is they want, it's going to put more pressure on the Treasury. And we're hearing today, aren't we, that there looks like they're going to cancel the new hospitals programme and various railway stuff and whatever other capital projects there are, because they say, look, there's no money and we're not going to put taxes up. So this is my view, Mike, is a very dangerous situation for GPs to find themselves in.
No, it totally is. But I speak to a guy called Dr. Dean Eggy, I don't know if you know him, who comes on our show on a regular basis. He tells me that he's quite happy to admit that he only does a 3-day week as a GP. And he says, if we had to do 5, it wouldn't be possible because he would burn himself out. And an awful lot of doctors say the same thing. But he spends the other 2 days doing what he calls, sort of pathway planning and things that he says he's very good at. All of which begs the question, well, what's the point of being a GP if you're not going to do it full time?
No, and when I sort of started out in the NHS, you had a GP, you knew who it was. Yeah. You had a family relationship with a GP. My GP looked after my dad when he died, and he looked after me, and he looked after my kids. Yeah. We had a relationship. Now, of course, primary care has gone from family practice into a sort of an industrialised primary care where you never really know who you're going to see, and you may get a personal appointment, you may end up with a physiotherapist.
But why is that though? Because that's the big question. Why has it changed to something which is a lot worse?
It's changed. Well, principally, it's the shortage of money in the system. I mean, you're quite right. There are GPs. I read a story the other day about a fully qualified GP working in Asda because he couldn't get a job working in the NHS.
It makes no sense.
It doesn't. There's no money to pay them. But on the other hand, you can say, well, pay the GPs, give them what it is they want, get more working, get the NHS rocking and rolling again. But it all comes down to money, and Labour have raised huge expectations around the NHS, which obviously I'm in favour of, because if there's any more money for the NHS, I'm first in the queue. But I don't think it's going to be that easy to pull this off. I really don't.
No.
And it does worry me. I mean, junior doctors going on strike in hospital, well, it shoves a lot of people. 1.5 million appointments have had to have been reorganised, and it does put people in danger. But the real risk is primary care, because if you're not well, the first port of call is your GP. What will people do? They'll say, I can't see my GP, I'm off to the A&E. So we know what's going to happen.
Absolutely right. And of course there is money. It's not that there's no money, it's the fact that it's not spent properly. I mean, I'm seeing a story today about how the NHS spent £410 million on claims from nearly 700 patients because of amputations that had to be done, which were needlessly done, not because they weren't needed at the time when they were done, but they could have been avoided had the people been seen and had the problem that they had been spotted earlier, and instead of which they've all now been in receipt of an average of 450,000 quid each in reparation money and negligence money from the NHS. You know, their legal bill is huge. I know, for example, that in obstetrics, in birthing of babies, a third of the budget is used up to pay out legal expenses. You know, it's nonsense.
Yeah, just to be clear about that, the amount of money that it's not always paid out. A lot of it, if there is a claim, then they hold some money in reserve. So it's the amount of reserve that they've got in the event of a claim being fulfilled. But you're right. I mean, litigation in the NHS, it's a huge problem.
Yeah,
and there is a whole department in the NHS that deals with it, and you get to the point where these no-win, no-fee lawyers turn up and have a go over something. It's easier and quicker to pay them to get rid of them than it is to go through the whole protracted thing of paying a fortune to lawyers to get to court. It's easier and cheaper not to do it. That we need to have the kind of system they've got in New Zealand and in Sweden. It's called no fault complaints, where they look at what has gone wrong separately to what it needs to put something right. And so the litigation, it doesn't come into it. What really costs the money are the solicitors and litigation.
Right.
There are better ways of doing it.
Exactly right. But what I'm saying is you can't go around saying we haven't got enough money and then everybody else can go, yeah, but how about this and how about that? And everybody knows there's a huge area of non-medical spending that goes on as well, which doesn't probably need to be made in quite such large numbers.
Yes, I mean, the whole of that needs to be reviewed the department's called NHS Resolution, and you can look up on the website and see what their budget is, and it's an astonishing amount of money.
Yeah, it really is extraordinary. Well, listen, the ballot closes today, so if they do vote to strike, I'm sure we'll be talking very soon again. Roy, thanks very much indeed. Roy Lilley there, former NHS Trust Chairman and Health Policy Analyst.